All right, so good afternoon. It's Phil Rush again here. We're going to do our weekly training. Today we're going to focus solely on underwriting. So when we look at the trail of what we've done over the last couple of weeks, we've focused first on how to illustrate term, how to do a multi-carrier step in the process of illustrating term, the benefits of term, and really how to position it with your clients and things to overcome that. Then last week we focused more on illustrations of accumulation and death benefit focused IULs, and the majority of the sales are really going to fall into those categories. However, what I always like to say is that underwriting is that other piece. So we can easily illustrate something for a client and have it look pretty. However, the downside is that if they don't physically underwrite for that carrier, then there's going to be a problem. And everything that we illustrate to them, now we have to backpedal and figure out a way to flip the script, so to speak. So what I love is the value proposition of what we have here at Valor is the ability to have 30 different carriers at our fingertips. Underwriting is seen as an art and not a science. If it was a science, every carrier would have the exact same products. Every carrier would have the exact same underwriting. But some carriers like different risks versus others, and that helps us create choice. And like I say before, it's like an art, not a science. So here we have 30 different artists ready to paint a canvas for our clients. And I think that's why I love this, approach a lot better. I'll show you some opportunities as to where this can make sense for your client, but also doing some pre-prep work is so important to even start the process. So one time I had an agent ask me, they said, well, Phil, we always run our clients at best risk class because we don't want the carrier to give our clients standard when they actually should be a preferred best. And if we run them at standard, then the carrier will only give them standard or worse. And that is far from the truth. The reason why carriers have underwriting guidelines is so agents can look at them, understand exactly where their client is supposed to be, and then ultimately place their client with the best opportunity right off the bat. So the reason why we want to focus on field underwriting is really to set up a understanding with our client. We want them to have an appropriate expectation before they even sign on the dotted line. It's always nice to show pretty numbers. I can show, $10 million premium payment. It doesn't mean I'm going to find someone to sell that case to. But when we talk to clients, we have to have them understand from a price perspective, that's that, financial needs analysis piece, to marry it with a carrier and a product that might fit for them. So what carrier might fit for me, being a bigger individual, might not be the same carrier for someone who runs habitually marathons, because the pricing may be better with some carrier, but their underwriting may be a little stricter versus another carrier that might be a little bit more liberal with underwriting, but that's baked into the price of the product. So that's why it just depends. And sometimes some carriers table B will be better than some carriers standard, given the fact that the pricing is different. So we have to set the right expectation when we're talking with our clients to let them know and let them understand that just because you get an offer doesn't mean it's going to be the best and says super fantastic awesome. The standard from a different carrier with better pricing might actually be better. Funny side story, if you talk about true long-term care or long-term care type products, there's one carrier that has 6 tables inside their preferred rating. So if you have someone who's very unhealthy, but they bought a product from this one carrier, it says preferred, long-term care looks at morbidity and not mortality, and therefore it would be completely different than if they applied for a life insurance policy. So we have to take all of that into consideration anytime we're doing any type of field underwriting. So if you think about the list of questions that you want to ask your client, question number one, I try and keep it as non-invasive as possible to help them feel more comfortable. So what I like to ask them is, on a scale of 1 to 10, from 1 being you have 1 foot in the grave to 10 being you're ready to go run a marathon, what would you rate yourself? Most people will not say a 10. And if you're looking at them and they're not a 10, then you might have to get a little bit more blunt. However, they might say a 7. Okay, well, tell me why you think you're a 7. Well, I have high blood pressure. I'm taking medication for that. Oh, medication. What medication are you taking? And how many milligrams are you taking? So that's a way to dive into those invasive questions. But if you want to get a true answer and really feel out a client, height, weight, date of birth, because some carriers are age nearest. So to get the right quote, any medications, any major surgeries, why do they have those medications? And if they are major surgeries like diabetes, not a surgery, but health issue, cancer, maybe they had cancer in the past, heart attack, stroke, all of that we need more information on, because some carriers are particular in what they'll take. Other carriers may not take it at all. And so we have to just make sure that we have the right type of questions being asked up front. And then we have a tool on the back end that can shop all the carriers for you, and you can have tentative ideas within about 5 to 7 business days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the benefit of what we have with our partners at 3Mark. And it would be as if you were logging in right here. You log in, and it'll unlock some additional opportunities for you. So for example's sake, you'll see all this information here. I've gone through it a few times with different presentations, but if you want some additional training videos directly from 3Mark on how to run illustrations, how to get set up, how to view your cases through Smart Office, and other things, they have their own videos here. They have their own CE benefit, where if you are a new agent and you're trying to get your life license, you can shave off 65% of the initial cost using a company called WebCE, which is very popular in the industry. We'll touch on X-ray and what X-ray can do for you. It wasn't working for me earlier, so we'll see if we can give it the old college try. If not, I have an example of a response from an actual case. And then lastly, we have all the information down here too, how to do quoting, apps, electronic systems, everything that your little hearts can desire. But once again, we're focusing on underwriting today. So you could either click on the underwriting tab here, or you'll see a slew of different spots here for underwriting and what you can do. So I usually go to this drop down because I know a specific location where I want to go. But if I click down here in the underwriting tab here, or if I highlight up here and go to the underwriting and impaired risk, they both go to the same place. And so here on the site, you have a lot of extra information at your fingertips that you wouldn't get if you were at certain other places, so to speak. And first off, I can't say enough good things about David Royce. He is someone who is there to help us when it comes to hard to place cases. He helped myself and the agent that partnered with me to get that $108 million placed. We used 5 carriers. We had to wrangle between all 5 of them to find it, and that was using this informal application, which I'll talk about. But pivotal person, he is on the 3Mark payroll, so you don't have to pay him for his expertise. But what I would say is come to me first, let's talk it through, and if we need to go to David, or if it's a high premium case, we can always get him involved as well right from the beginning. But some of the tools and resources you have at your fingertips, we're also going to look at Intel here as well. So let's start out with a couple things. I'm going to skip this for just a second, and we're going to go to underwriting questionnaires. So as I mentioned before, when you think about certain questionnaires or certain ailments or issues, they all fall within a different type of category. So I'll use one that's very familiar, diabetes. It's running rampant. If your client has diabetes and you want to see a tentative offer from them, you can print this out, start writing it out, or copy and paste all this information. You don't need the top part, seeing though you already know what type of design you have. But here, date of first diagnosis. How often does your client visit their physician? When was the last time they went? How's it controlled? Diet, oral medication, like metformin, or do they have a pump? Excuse me. If they have their A1C, that's very critical. And please, if the client's A1C is 10 or up, no one's going to take them. I promise you that. And then we keep going. You have additional questions, and then you can add those into the X-ray system, which once again, I'll hopefully be able to show you here in a minute. But all major concerns you might have, if you'll notice, my client had cancer. What kind of cancer? Because there are so many different variables and different types of cancer. You have a generic one here, but I'll tell you, it's when did it happen? How did it get fixed? What grade was it? How was it fixed? And anything after that, hospitalizations, any relapse, whatever, will help you with that process. But all of these are available for you to pull up to ask those questions to your client so you can get the right information up front. Now, if we go back to the prior page, let's go to the carrier-specific underwriting guidelines, which is, if I click there, it brings me right here. So if you'll see, we have all the specific guidelines for the carriers, accelerated underwriting programs, financial guidelines, because believe it or not, when you're doing underwriting, it's not only medically underwritten, it's also financially. That's why you don't see a janitor making, 30 grand a year buying a $10 million policy. Fiscally, he can't afford it. And the reason why we buy life insurance is to make someone whole, not make someone rich. So if, for example's sake, I wanted to check out a carrier, let's say Corbridge, you'll see the field underwriting guide updated as of May. It has everything in here when you're talking about how to dictate what Corbridge is going to do. You'll have all these funny things like PM, BU, MDR, CR, BU, blood and urine, PM, paramedical, right there. And so it gives you an idea of what your client should expect potentially. This is for term. And if, for example's sake, we go to permanent, you have the ability potentially for non-med, MDR. So there's opportunities for non-medical here as well. And then so on and so forth. Blood pressure, I get this all the time, or when I was an RVP for AIG, someone would come to me and say, Phil, my client got preferred, they should be preferred plus. This is not fair. Well, it usually falls within a couple things, either blood pressure, BMI, or the cholesterol HDL ratio was like 4.9 or 5.0. Well, that falls within the category of preferred. So all the information is in here. So before you try and go back for a better risk class, take a look at the field underwriting guide to make sure everything falls within the characteristics of what the carrier is saying is preferred or preferred plus. And so if we go back here and we'll look at the informal application. Now this is critical for a few things. So say, for example, say you have a very large case, say it's like 30,000 target premium or higher, or they have a lot of ailments or issues, okay? So what we can do is we use this informal inquiry process. We put the information of the client, any insurance they have, foreign travel, any type of tobacco usage, history. So what type of history do they have? diabetes, cancer, blood pressure. If it's something different, then we can add a note. We can add like an additional Word document. Physician information, there's a spot here for 2, but if they need more, we can add those. Now, depending on the size of the case, we can also have them sign off here, and this will allow us to use this as a HIPAA for all these carriers. So what they'll do is they'll go on the back end and shop with all those carriers based on the information. Before you go and do this, please talk to me about it first, because there might be a better way to do it versus firing off a bunch of these. Remember, these are usually for higher profile cases or clients who have a lot of issues that we just don't know who will take them. So usually those end up being high premium dollar cases anyway. So, but you do have this. We've used this several times. The other way you can use this is just getting your client to sign this informal inquiry form that if your carrier does not like what they see or gives a rating you don't like, you can then ask them to informally shop with the other carriers, share the records that were already used, and then ultimately pass them on to speed up the process for maybe the second carrier. Now, the X-ray system here is designed to basically allow you to do informal shopping. And if it doesn't work, what I'm going to do is I'm going to notice it's still not working for me. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to pull up a Word document that has a bunch of offers on it, and I will share with you how this works. So normally what would happen is in this X-ray system, yeah, for me it's not working. Apparently it's still working, but not for me. But in the X-ray system, what would happen is I would enter in my information for my client. So it could be name, date of birth, height, weight. You talk about, you can add blood pressure, you can add cholesterol, you can add, like, does the chest size exceed the waist size? Do they have specific readings for blood pressure, specific cholesterol readings? So if you have that information, the more information you give, the better the response. When it boils down to it, they'll ask if you have other ailments, so motor vehicle report issues, like maybe 3, DUIs or speeding, or you have different things like diabetes. You want to see how other carriers handle it. And then what happens is, after you write up the notes, you submit it to the back office, and then they shop it informally. So it'll say not Phil Resch, 41-year-old male. It'll say Mr. Client, 41-year-old male, and here's the issues. So we had a client who got this situation where they were a male, born in '68, $3 million in term, and then they had a few complications like an 8.6 A1C. So that's a pretty high A1C. Remember I said 10 means you're not going to get coverage. Taking 20 milligrams of simvastatin, 1,000 milligrams of metformin twice a day, so it's pretty high dosage. And then possible carrier matches. John Hancock, standard non-smoker. So there's an opportunity still for a standard non-tobacco. But what they're also saying is assuming well followed up, diabetes has no complications, no history of albuminuria, A1C at least fair control, tentative standard based upon any other reviews. So these again, once again are tentative, they're not ironclad. You have to submit this with the formal application, though, showing that you already ran some stuff by the underwriters. Then you'll see other ones: Protective, Table 2, Banner, Table 3, Columbus, Table 3, Pac Life, Table 3, North American, 3, 3, and then we start going into, well, another 3. So you'll see 8.6 is acceptable with quite a few carriers, but as the list goes on, it gets worse and worse. So all of that you can then use to substantiate your offer with the client so they know the rest of the industry is the same and they don't go walking down the streets as the other guy because he can give you a better rate. You've shopped them all, so therefore he doesn't need to shop them all. So that's the beauty of this X-ray design. It sets the expectation for the client. Now, one thing that I truly love is on this Intel tab, we have a couple things here. The IntelliSheets, I'll get to that in a second. If we look at the impairment niches, now this is pretty cool. This tells where some people have their specialties. Asthma, Prudential, Banner, Mutual of Omaha and Lincoln, AFib, Securian and Lincoln, Aviation, Pru, Nationwide, Securian, Transamerica. You'll see Prudential on here a lot because Prudential takes a lot of risk on. They have their own underwriting manual. No other carrier has their own underwriting manual. Prudential is one of the biggest insurance companies in the country. And then what you'll see is, so once again, Diabetes, Columbus, Hancock, Banner, Lincoln, and Prudential are all contenders. Once again, going back to pricing, maybe a Columbus Table 3 is better than a Prudential Standard. We don't know until we run the numbers. This is a good one to remember as well, is other tobacco. So if you have a client who dips, chews, snuff, cigar, pipe, Chantix, anything but actual cigarettes, vaping as well, even with a positive urinalysis, you can get non-tobacco with these 4 carriers. So once again, they do lab work. Even with a positive analysis, you can get non-tobacco. You just have to disclose it on the application. So if they find it, it wasn't disclosed, then you say it's a cigar, doesn't matter, you're still a tobacco user. So that is under the Intel, under impairment niches. Now here's a really, really cool thing that was added recently. It's called the IntelliSheets. And they've got data on everybody. So if we look at 1035 procedures, we can look at that. AML guidelines, contracting, conversions, you name it, they got it. Now, one thing that I always love looking at is the accelerated underwriting sheet. So if I check this box, and then I check all carriers, let's say one of you asked me for the accelerated underwriting, I'll do this, open in Excel. It'll pull up an accelerated underwriting sheet, which is pulling up on a separate screen. Here we go. And you can now see what people are offering based on face amount, based on age, with all the different carriers in the industry. So up to 2 million, up to 2 million, Lincoln up to 2.5. You have Mass Mutual up to 1, 2 for Mutual of Omaha, 1 for Nationwide, or 5 for their permanent products, I believe. Guarantee level term, no. Oh, that's age, 18 to 50. So 3 million, 2.5, 5 million with principal. So you'll see here that there's a lot of opportunity even for non-med, but we have to dive in further to make sure that we understand what the guidelines are to get this to, which is usually over here on what else you have available from that standpoint. So once again, one size doesn't fit all, but every carrier has a different niche and a different opportunity. So that is once again under the Intel tab. Under the IntelliSheets, you can find all the different information here, and these are updated regularly to make sure that you don't have any outstanding data. Now, certain carriers have other different types of niches. For example's sake, you can see here, John Hancock can actually insure people who have HIV. So can Symetra. So can Pac Life. So you have to realize they have to be pretty healthy. But if they do have HIV, there are some people who can potentially take them as well. And one thing that's really cool is the strategic underwriting program that it's over here too under the strategic underwriting program. In the industry of life insurance, you have 2 different situations. One is you have the basic amount from the carrier, say it's like 5 million, 2 million, 10 million, that's usually what's on the carrier's, what we call paper, like their application or their policy. If you have a face amount that is higher than that amount, say it's $2 million, say you have a $5 million policy, well, you have reinsurers behind the scenes that actually help insurance companies take bigger policies, but they have their own underwriting manuals. So some in the industry are Swiss Re, Gen Re, Munich Re, Scores, RGA. There's one in Canada Re. But these are basically reinsurers that the insurance company will pay them money. It's almost like buying insurance on insurance. So if, for example, say something catastrophic happens, and let's say, North American has a $2 million internal retention, but you bought a $10 million policy, well, if that was all by North American, that could really impact their bottom line. So they take the other 8 and put it with a reinsurance company and pay them to take on that additional risk. So if someone died with a $10 million policy, then Swiss Re will actually pay $8 million and North American will pay the other 2. The client will see one giant check, but I'm just telling you what happens behind the scenes. So what's interesting is that through David Royce, we have a strategic partnership with RGA, which is one of the reinsurance companies, that we can basically go directly to RGA, get an underwriting from RGA, and then whoever they have an agreement with from an insurance carrier standpoint, we can then just write up the paperwork, submit it, and the carrier has to take it. So those are for some higher cases. You probably won't use that on a day-to-day, but just another cool thing that we have at our fingertips through our partnership with 3Mark. And then lastly, what I'll talk about is it's a foreign national playbook. So if you guys dabble in the foreign national world, you talk about general insight, like what are carriers looking for? That's your basic information here, your general requirements, any type of tax consideration. And then you have carriers that have specific net worths that might be needed to get policies through. Symetra has become very liberal with their foreign national guidelines. You can see how to get started, the program details, what's needed from a tie-in to the United States. And then you have other people who, not foreign nationals coming to the United States, but resident aliens who might only have an ITIN, or maybe no ITIN, but they have a passport and they're paying taxes. That's where someone like a National Life Group is going to offer a very good value proposition for that. So you'll find that depending on what you're looking for, you have it all at your fingertips on this one site, but you also have my expertise to help out as well. That is what I'm here for. But needless to say is there's a lot of things here that can really help enhance your practice and your opportunity to grow. So once again, just kind of going back to what we started with is what we'll finish with. Why is field underwriting so important? It's to set the expectation for the client. Not everybody's going to get a preferred plus. Where we went, you can see through the 3Mark portal, we have a lot of accessibility to help you get what you need for your clients right at your fingertips. And ultimately, if you have questions, we have people like myself and people at 3Mark that can help out with those additional underwriting questions, and the carriers too. We have all the phone numbers for the regional VPs and the internal wholesalers for each different carrier, so you have full autonomy to ask your questions and get the right answers. And so, that being said, I'll turn the recording off and leave time if anybody has any questions.